Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be continuing into part 2 of What If Goku Wasn't a Saiyan. If you haven't seen part 1, there is a title card where you can go check it out and see what happened in the last part, but today we'll be continuing into Z. What is in store for our Z fighters in the future? What are the Saiyans doing in Frieza's army? How can Goku grow any stronger since he is no longer a Saiyan? Also, if y'all are interested, I own a Discord server for anyone who wants to join and talk more about Dragon Ball with me and other viewers. Maybe give us some of your own ideas of what ifs and maybe in the future I could do them. Check the link in the description down below. For today's question of the video comes from T. Dot. What is your favorite outfit in Dragon Ball? And I got two little answers. One, it would be Dragon Ball Z's Bardock with the little bandana and the little things on his wrist. I'm not too sure what they're called, but I kind of like the fit. A little bit different from your average Saiyan. If I'm not including like normal battle gear, it will have to be definitely Piccolo in that one outfit he wore in a filler episode where he was getting his driver's license, because man, that fit was fire. I'm not gonna lie. Thank you so much for your question. If you want your comment to be featured in the next video, just comment down a question you would like for me to answer, whether it's about Dragon Ball, another anime, or personal, and maybe you'll be looking for your comment to be featured in the next video. Without further ado, let's dive into part 2 of What If Goku Wasn't a Saiyan. In the last part, the Z fighters all sensed a powerful and unfamiliar key signature as they would all head over to the location of this mysterious person. Once they arrived, they would see a teenager who no one recognized as he had purple hair and a sword on him. The only thing they could distinguish from his appearance is the Capsule Corp logo on his jacket. He introduced himself as Trunks and that he is from the future, which shocks everyone, as he also states that he is the offspring of Bulma and Yamcha. Shocking everyone even more besides Yamcha, as he knew Bulma was pregnant since they eventually got back together, and without a Vegeta on this planet, Yamcha wouldn't lose Bulma to him. So before we continue on with the story, let's take a look on what happened in the future timeline in this what if scenario. So with time passing, nothing really happened on Earth as the Z fighters just continued training together, mastering their Kaioken, and Goku working on using his monster ape form. However, eventually Goku would end up dying of the heart virus, as my theory of the heart virus is that Goku contracted the virus based on how he lived as a child, cause he spent a good few years alone without an actual adult. With power levels at this time, Piccolo would be the strongest. Him being the only alien on Earth has him with the greatest potential. He would only be weaker than Goku if he used the 10 times multiplier of his monster ape form, unless Piccolo pushed himself with Kaioken. Also, given his alien anatomy, he was the only fighter that could use Kaioken to its fullest abilities since he can regrow his limbs. After Goku's death in age 764, the Z fighters still continued on to train until 3 years would pass, as in age 767, androids 17 and 18 would appear. Now given that aliens like Saiyans and Frieza never came to Earth, and the fact that the Z fighters are a lot weaker in this timeline, that means that Dr. Gero has less info to work with, making the androids a lot weaker in this timeline, but still stronger than the Z fighters. So with Piccolo, Tien, Yamcha, Krillin, and Gohan, they would all go fight the androids to attempt to stop them. Now they do like Vegeta, so they are down one man, but they each do have Kaioken. However, even with all them having Kaioken, I don't think they could beat the androids and would still have the same fate, but with Piccolo and Gohan being the last one standing. Piccolo would sacrifice himself in order to save Gohan as a way to repay for what he did to Goku many years ago. He would push his body's limits using a level of Kaioken that he hasn't used before, just so that Gohan can have the chance to get away. He would give enough time for Gohan to escape, but sadly in the end Piccolo wouldn't have been strong enough to stop the androids and would end up dying like the rest of the Z fighters. With only a young Gohan left, he felt pretty hopeless. He didn't have any special DNA or hidden power that made him believe that he could take on the androids. However, when Trunks was born, he let that be enough to drive him to continue to grow stronger. He would spend most of his time training, mainly focusing on using higher levels of Kaioken. Note, in case people would ask if Mr. Popo would tell Bulma about Kami's spaceship and where he is from, I would say he would, but honestly they can't do nothing about it. With the fact now the only fighter to protect the planet is Gohan, so he can't leave Earth, and Bulma just gave birth to Trunks and wouldn't leave either, so they are stuck with the hands that they're dealt with. Gohan would use a mixture of gravity training and would hop into the time chamber from time to time, as he couldn't stay in there alone for a long time. But with the lack of a training partner and without the ability of Zenkais, his growth would be rather slow. He would still fight the androids from time to time, but would have a lot more close calls than canon since he didn't grow stronger after every near-death experience. It is the age 775, around 5 years before the death of future Gohan. Trunks is 9 years old, so he's just a kid, but his training has begun with Gohan. The reason we are talking about this age is because something else happens. During one day while they are training, that is when Gohan would sense a weak power level entering the atmosphere, as he would spot a spaceship that crash landed on Earth. Gohan went over to look at what it was, as when he would see the ship open, he would see a very beaten and bloody Raditz unconscious. Gohan grabbed a hold of Raditz and brought him to a Capsule Corp before the androids could follow them. Bulma would take care of his injuries, and it wouldn't take some time, as with how Gohan is just a normal human, it is safe to say that I wouldn't think he has any senzu beans left over to give to Raditz. so they would just have to wait for him to heal up naturally. A few months would pass on as Raditz would wake up terrified as he doesn't know where he is, until Gohan was able to hold him down. For power levels, Gohan right now sits at 120,000 and can use up to Kaioken times 10 without destroying his body, but if needed, he can go up to times 20, but that would put himself at risk. With Raditz being fully healed and given a Zenkai boost, he would be at a power level of 20,000. Gohan would ask Raditz who he is and where he's come from, as then Raditz would explain who he is, talking about the Saiyans who are a warrior race, but ended up being almost extinct by a terrible warlord named Frieza. Now we go back a few years to follow up what Raditz and the other Saiyans were up to. Without having a brother on Earth, Raditz would stick with Vegeta and Nappa as they continue on invading and clearing out planets for Frieza, as they still wanted to overthrow Frieza, so they just continued to rely on their Zenkais to grow stronger. And after so many years, eventually they would grow strong enough to believe that they could take on Frieza. They would plan an attack on a Frieza planet to draw out Frieza. Once he arrived, they would all transform into their Great Ape form besides Raditz, as he was very unsure about this plan, thinking they would just all die. He would be fighting against the many Frieza soldiers while Vegeta and Nappa were fighting Frieza. At first things seemed like they were on their side until Frieza transformed into his second form, as then he would completely change the tide of the battle, turning it into a slaughter, as he would quickly remove the tail of both Vegeta and Nappa. Raditz was growing tired and being overwhelmed by Frieza's army, as he would use a double Sunday attack to gain distance and began fleeing as he would look back just to see Frieza kill Nappa and begin to torture Vegeta. Raditz was hurt and tired, but he managed to find his way to a space pod and fled from the planet, putting a random coordinate and ending up going to Earth. After hearing the story, both Gohan and Bulma were shocked to learn about aliens existing, but what they didn't know was that Trunks was eavesdropping and heard the entire conversation. Gohan would tell Raditz about their situation on Earth and ask if he could help them solve this issue. Raditz wasn't sure about it at first, but with learning about Zenkais, Gohan believes that he can help him grow strong fast since he already is pretty strong himself, and that Raditz may be the key to ending the androids. So, with some convincing, the next 5 years, Gohan, Raditz, and Trunks would train together, and it would take around a year for Raditz to catch up with Gohan, and after he did, the gains for their training would boost up a lot more thanks to Raditz's Saiyan DNA. With Raditz growing rapidly, so would Gohan and Trunks, and eventually the other 4 years would pass as here are their power levels. Raditz at 5 million, Gohan at 2 million and can use up to Kaioken times 15 without straining his body too much, and Trunks would be at a power level of 1 million, but hasn't learned the Kaioken as Gohan isn't too knowledgeable about teaching him the Kaioken. They would see a city under attack, and we'll go check it out and meet androids 17 and 18. This time when they fight, things are very different as because of Raditz, they are actually stronger than the androids. Raditz would face off against 18 and Gohan would face off against 17 on his own, as with having Kaioken, he could easily overpower him. If I had to get an estimate of the androids' power levels in this timeline, I would say they're around 2 million. So honestly, Trunks wouldn't need to fight as they would be more than enough to stop the androids. They would destroy the androids and save the planet. With the androids defeated, they began focusing on rebuilding the planet, and Bulma was planning to go out in space to find planet Namek as the Earth is safe, and she did finish a time machine that she was working on. Even with the defeat of the androids, Earth would not be safe forever, as only a year would pass as Frieza and his army arrived on Earth, as once he figured out that a Saiyan escaped, he would use Raditz's space pod to track him down as he wanted to end the last remaining Saiyan. Raditz grew fearful, but with Gohan and Trunks as his backup, maybe they could pull this off. At first things seemed easy, that Frieza had to instantly go into his third form to be able to fight against the Z fighters. They were easily dealing with Frieza, even in his third form, which he grew very angry about. Once Frieza transformed into his final form, they had no hope. Gohan would go past his Kaioken limit, breaking his body. But even at Kaioken times 25, he couldn't surpass Frieza's power level. Frieza would slowly start killing Raditz, while Trunks, very injured, would crawl to Gohan, who was barely awake, as Gohan told Trunks to go back home and use Bulma's time machine to change the past, as that is the only hope they would have to fix the future. Just like how Piccolo did for him when he was younger, Gohan got back up to distract Frieza and give Trunks time to retreat. Gohan got back up even with all the pain in his body, going into Kaioken times 5, which his body couldn't handle anymore, but he needed to buy as much time as he can, rushing over to Frieza, trying to fight him, but couldn't land a single hit on him, as Frieza just mocked him as he stand over Gohan's body, ready to end him, as Gohan would use his last Hail Mary, powering up into the first level of Kaioken and shooting a solar flare right at Frieza, blinding him for extra time, as Gohan would just lay on the floor laughing as he knows that it is over for him. Once Frieza regained his vision, he would charge a death beam to shoot Gohan, but by the time he was ready to shoot it, Gohan was already dead. Frieza was angry and sick of this planet as he began charging up a death ball to destroy the Earth. Trunks arrived at Capsule Corp telling his mom what happened and how they need to go back in time to fix it. Bulma broke the news to Trunks that only one person can fit into the time machine. Trunks didn't want to leave his mother and tried to make her go, but she wasn't going to allow that, shoving him into the time machine and locking in the date for Trunks, telling him that it is up to him to save everyone and make a new future for them. The time machine started and Trunks would fly up. Before leaving, he would slowly see his planet begin to explode, and that was the last time he would see this timeline. Hearing this entire story disturbed everyone with how bad the future turns out, especially the Gohan, hearing that he was the sole protector of the Earth. He grew a bit worried about all the pressure, but this also motivated him to grow even stronger. Future Trunks would give the medicine to Goku, and this time around he would actually take it and not forget. With the warning of the androids coming in 3 years, everyone began training together. But with Future Trunks' knowledge of the events that happened in this timeline, he would want to bring the Saiyans to Earth so they could help them beat the androids, and then all together worked on beating Frieza. Goku would get the idea of gathering the Dragon Balls to wish them to Earth, which they would do since Future Trunks is multiple times stronger than the 3 Saiyans. Once they are teleported to Earth, all 3 of them would be very confused on what is going on, as their scouters are also destroyed from the teleporting from space to Earth. Vegeta would get into a fighting stance, but Future Trunks would just slowly walk up to Vegeta and his crew, explaining the entire situation and how he is from the future. Vegeta wouldn't believe him and try to punch him, but Future Trunks wouldn't even flinch at the attack. He began telling the Saiyans info that only one of them would know, as Future Trunks would look at Raditz saying that he trained them in his timeline, after they failed at killing Frieza, leaving Vegeta and Nappa dead and Raditz fleeing to Earth. They were still skeptical, but slowly was starting to believe him that this was a time traveler. So with that said, Future Trunks would begin trying to train the Saiyans and the Z Fighters since he is far stronger than all of them, and now he kinda has to stay here since his Earth was destroyed, which would be pretty weird, especially for when this timeline's Trunks would be born, as how could they explain to him that Future Trunks is him from the future? For the training, it would stick with sparring for now so that everyone would catch up as quickly as possible. The first year, the Saiyans quickly outgrew the rest of the Z Fighters besides Future Trunks thanks to their Saiyan DNA. Future Trunks would also finally learn the Kaioken, as Future Gohan never taught him how to use it since it was Goku who was much more knowledgeable about the technique. Future Trunks would also spend a lot of time with his father Yamcha, since he was there by the time he was just a baby. Goku would continue on working with mastering his monster ape form since he's never died to the heart virus. When the Saiyans see that Goku has a tail, they are surprised and ask Goku if he was a Saiyan as well, but Goku denied it as he knew for sure that he was from Earth. And to not cause any confusion, the difference with Goku's tail and the Saiyans' tails is that Goku's tail is a lot bigger compared to the Saiyans, and it can always regrow back rather quickly. However, this curiosity allowed Goku to befriend the Saiyans, as he was starting to train with them more often, especially with the fact that he can use Kaioken to grow far stronger to keep up with the Saiyans. Goku would actually gain some help with learning how to fully control his monster ape form from the Saiyans, as their Ozaru forms seemed to have a lot of similarities. However, something was different. Goku would transform into his monster ape form and eventually be fully able to control himself within the form, but the second he did, he immediately reverted back to his base and couldn't bring it back, which confused him and the others as well. A more shocking thing for Goku is that he lost his ability to fly, making him very worried about the upcoming threat. Summoning his Nimbus Cloud to help him return back up to the lookout, once Nimbus arrived at Goku, he would also see his power pole. He hasn't used or seen his power pole in quite some time and decided to keep it on him for the time being. When returning to the lookout, he tells everyone about the issue, which shocked them all. Goku had no clue why he can't transform into his monster ape form or even fly, until Yamcha makes a joke about Goku's possible special origin of his tail. Goku then thought about summoning Shenron and deciding to go out on a journey to find the Dragon Balls to summon Shenron to finally learn about his true origins. He believes that his friends and the Saiyans could beat the androids without him, while he is gone for this journey, as he would hop on his flying Nimbus and begins to hunt for the Dragon Balls, on his own, as it reminded him as his adventures when he was a kid searching for the magical orbs. While Goku is away, the others would continue on their training in preparations for the androids. However, pretty far away, there is a tiny mechanical bug watching their every move. If you can guess, that bug is from the Red Ribbon Army mad scientist Dr. Gero, as he never stopped watching the Z Fighters. Remember, in this timeline, Dr. Gero gathered information from the Saiyans' arrival and when Mecha Frieza went to Earth, but his bug was destroyed because of the intense fighting in the area. This never happened on this timeline, as aliens didn't appear much until later on. Seeing how this new info is present, Dr. Gero would actually hold off on his androids being released to get more info on these Saiyans, just in case, and to make his androids stronger. And now, knowing about this future time traveler, he would make sure to take measures to throw off the time traveler's versions of events. He was quite annoyed at how he sees the lack of Goku since he was the main person he wanted to get revenge on. Away back in space, Frieza would then be notified about the missing Saiyans, as they have been MIA for quite some time. He would grow pretty angry when he also learns that how he can't track them, as their space pods were left behind as well, as he would grow curious about how they managed to disappear without a spaceship. With them missing, he didn't waste more time going on the hunt for the Saiyans, as he didn't like how he didn't know where they were. With Goku, he is out exploring looking for the Dragon Balls as he grew sleepy, decided to take a nap on his Nimbus. And in his dream, he began seeing a shadow figure, but couldn't get a clear picture on who he was. It just made him more curious as to where he came from. And that's where we're going to leave it off for now. Tell me how you think about the second part and how I did with the continuation of this What If. What journey will Goku go through into finding his mysterious origin, and will he ever get his powers back? With Dr. Gero holding off on releasing the androids, how will this change the timeline? Frieza realizing that the Saiyans are missing and now on the hunt, will he find the Saiyans or will they find him first? What could have happened differently? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. I would love to hear them. If you're interested and enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be alerted whenever I post another part. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next part. See ya.